So this is Shadow of the Eagle, Battle of Medellin, 1809. Moving to turn 2, so the orders phases first. All the Spanish, both players are doing this. The Spanish are going to keep all their commanders on attack orders, but for these French troops here, back by the village of Medellin, for them to move up, because they all have no orders, they all need to change their orders. So I'm going to be looking at change orders. The first thing I figured out when looking at this is that Victor, the overall commander here, by scenario rules, he is not allowed to change orders during this turn 2. So that makes me wonder, the question I have is, in this case, if Victor cannot change orders during turn 2, does that mean that all of these subordinates, Laval, Ruffin, and Villatte, does that mean that none of them can change orders either? Other than that, I already checked, the front line screening, I guess you could say, to this south. Was that southeast? I'm looking upside down. No, southwest. No, southeast. No, southeast. They are defend orders, and with defend orders, they're not moving. I mean, you can move. The rules say something that's vague to me. Maybe it's not vague to really experienced Napoleonic gamers. Well, I'll tell you what the idea is. The idea is you cannot move unless 2 cases, which again are not clear to me. It says something about reoccupying a position. So does that mean if you were forced to retreat and you have defend orders, you can move back up? But to me, well, it's not necessarily prohibitive, but obviously you'd have to remember where you came from. And then the other thing is something about reinforcing a friendly unit in enemy contact or something, which makes sense in a real world sense. I'm not sure how to implement that in game terms here. And now that I think about it, since we had the Spanish cavalry already mix it up with since the Spanish cavalry on the Spanish left already mixed it up with the French cavalry on the right, does that mean that French cavalry unit cannot pull away with defend orders? Again, kind of makes sense, but then it also looks like the rules have no exceptions there. So we'll look into. So basically, right now we're talking about orders, how you change them, and how you implement with respect to first movement. Okay, first things first. If I understand these change orders rules correctly, if Victor can't change orders, then he cannot change the order of a subordinate, which means that I think that this whole second turn, these guys are basically frozen. So basically it's the front line troops that are holding from the Spanish advance, holding the ground. Okay, so I think there's just going to be fire. I think there's just going to be fire back and forth. I think I'm trying to think. Yeah, no. Actually, there will not be Spanish defensive fire, because defensive fire is only adjacent, and the only adjacent units are the 2 cavalry way over there on the French right. And I still don't see that cavalry conduct fire combat. I wonder if I should, this is a time to look at both the Spanish rules and the magazine English translation. I'll do that. orders change. Orders change looks, one, very straightforward. Two, again with a really, really small amount of wargaming experience on my part, this is probably, I'm guessing this is a kind of old school miniature style. What I mean by that is that, well, first I read in the scenario rules, for example, the Spanish Army Commander Cuesta, who's off the screen up there. The scenarios say that General Cuesta can only change orders once a turn. I first thought, being very green to all of this, I thought, why would Cuesta change his orders more than once a turn? When the orders indicate what you can do with respect to movement and combat, how would you do that more than once a turn? And then I read that Victor, the French Army commander, normally can change orders, can attempt to change orders up to 2 times per turn, except on turn 2, this is this turn, he cannot change any orders, and on turn 3 he can only change 1 order. So basically the French start with no orders changes on Victor's part, then turn 3 he gets to change 1 order, and then after that he gets his 2 per turn. But I was still wondering, why would the commander change? Anyways, it's obvious now that when they say Cuesta can only change 1 order per turn, attempt to change an order once per turn, wow, this could be really significant with only 16 turns, and you're rolling to change orders. And Cuesta, what that means to me is Cuesta can change only one, can attempt to change the orders of only one subordinate. That almost looks like, well, obviously I'll have to experience this, but this almost looks like if Cuesta's on the Spanish left, which he is, by the way, he's way over on the Spanish left. It's almost like he's really only influencing his part of the battlefield, and all the rest of the Spanish lines, the center and the right off the screen there, they're all running on their orders that they have. And that's, I mean, obviously that's nice. I mean, what I'm getting at is, I think, so on one hand, this is probably, I'm guessing this is more old school. Well, okay, I haven't explained. What I mean is when you go to change orders, like Velat, when Victor can change orders, Velat is trying to change his orders. How do you put it? Well, Victor's trying to change Velat's orders, but the mechanic is you're counting from the subordinate to the higher, the number of hexes, and you're dividing it by a number given in the scenario, and then you have to roll against that number to change your orders. So the point is, clearly distance between commanders matters, which is why I said if Cuesta can only attempt to change 1 order a turn, he's basically only realistically influencing his part of the line, his part of the battlefield. That's what I'm thinking is probably, I'm guessing, kind of old school, and it looks to me like it is sufficiently restrictive to be interesting. What I mean by that, of course, is it's sufficiently restrictive to be an interesting choice. How do you do this? And if I remember correctly, when you go to try to change those orders, I think at least the superior officer or commander cannot move. So if that's the case, Cuesta, for example, well, actually it's the same deal with Victor. Victor's way in the rear and Cuesta's way on the left. So neither of them are like center mass of their army's deployment. So yeah, I think this, on paper, this looks sufficiently restrictive to be an important decision of how you go about changing the orders. Because, I mean, the French I suppose the Spaniards can just, I suppose, go through the whole battle with their attack orders and never change, I guess. But, I mean, the French aren't, I mean, half of the army. Half of the army is back here by Medellin here with no orders. So they're dead in the water. So at least on the French side, you have to change orders. Attempt to change orders. Okay. But we're not doing it this turn, so I'll double check the French defensive fire, then we'll go to French offensive fire. We do have French offensive fire. So more about fire combat, real quick, not too much, but again, as far as the cavalry go, again, I checked the different version of my rules here. When they talk about fire, they only talk about infantry fire, and then they talk about artillery fire. They never talk about cavalry fire, so I'm assuming cavalry don't, which again, it makes sense, but I still want to make sure that that's what's actually intended. So I don't think cavalry do fire combat. So there's nothing there. So basically I only have artillery fire, for the French. Now here's a problem for me. This is obviously a it's obviously a French artillery unit, morale C, it's horse artillery at strength of 6. Problem I have is that there's supposed to be a 1, 2, or 3 dots over here for light, medium, or heavy cavalry. And there's no dot. And then I was thinking, well, maybe there's a scenario-specific rule that specifically says all horse artillery are such and such. I can't find that. So what I did is I went ahead and I went with all the horse artillery, and this is all horse artillery up here in the front, here, here, and here. I went with they're all light artillery. So they fired up here to the infantry there. These guys fired up here to this cavalry. This artillery, I couldn't get a line of fire. So these two fired. It's -1 for, it's half fire strength. So instead of 6, it's 3, and it's -1 for light cavalry, which means they have to get a 6 to get a D result. They didn't. They rolled a 5 and a 4. So French offensive fire, but ineffective. Now actually there's French shock combat, and I'll see what their defend order does to that. So this is interesting. So they're adjacent. Shock combat is not mandatory. But if you do shock combat, you have to attack all defenders. So the 3 French cavalry the 3 strength French cavalry unit there going up against the 3 Spanish units there, I think it's on the 1 to 4 column, which is horrible. There is no reason. I mean, they're not going to do it. So it's interesting that they appear to sit like this. Now, when I say appear to sit, I do need to emphasize that these hexes for this battle are 250 meter hexes, and these are 30-minute turns. So just to get some perspective here. Defend order, I mean, they're not moving. So with the defend order, they're not moving. It's not a penalty to them to shock combat, but they don't get the +1 that attackers get with attack orders. But horrible odds, not mandatory to a shock attack, so they're just not going to. But again, unfortunately, this might be where okay, alright, wait a minute. I'm going back to the defend order. Units may not move except to reoccupy a position that was lost. Again, what is a position? Yeah, what is a position? But anyways, or to reestablish contact with a supporting unit that is in an enemy zone of control. Again, I have no idea what they mean by supporting unit, but regardless of the wording there, which again I find very confusing. Maybe I should go back to the Spanish, but maybe this is what they mean. These guys, for example, or this unit, they can move with defend orders if they are moving to support a unit that is in an enemy zone of control. I don't know about that. That would make sense, because otherwise what I'm saying is the French cavalry is just sitting there. I'd like to move away, but I can't. I'm not going to attack. Yeah, I'm not going to attack. So, all right. So that was the French player turn. So we'll go to the Spanish player turn. They call it Spanish. They call it French phase and Spanish phase. Maybe I should use their terminology. So that was the French phase with the different segments, I guess. So we'll go to the Spanish phase.